Good
There we go.
morning.
Okay. Morning. How you doing?
How's life?
Eh, not bad. Pretty good. How about you?
Oh, everything's good. Everything. Where are you
Eh,
located?
I'm in Chicago.
Right on. I love that town.
Oh, nice.
It's one of my favorites. And it's
Hmm.
and it's one of those kind of like smaller versions of New York that's attainable from Kansas City.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not as quite as fast paced. Like you can get along. There's decent people, not a bunch of a-holes.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Well, man, it's great to meet you. Thanks for taking a minute out. And before we hop in to your life and comedy and everything that makes you who you are, I want to know, how did you
Mhm.
survive the last 3 years with COVID? How did you get through it? And how has it changed the way that you do things now?
Oh, surviving the year with COVID. It's a lot of different things. Creatively, I was able to write more often, but it kind of I used to live in LA, so it caused me to move to Chicago just for the people I knew in LA. They were still going to hire me no matter what, so I didn't. So it caused me to move, and then just being able to put more stuff out, but being kind of smarter about the way I put it out. So it's kind of just like I guess, a rechange for the format of getting creative material out. That's probably been the biggest thing.
So are you happy with the changes? Has it made you a stronger organism?
I think so. I'm definitely get a chance to do more different things, and kind of go in different avenues between like music, stand up, and writing stuff. Like I was on the road and I met a buddy in Nashville this past week. So he's got a deal. He wants to bring me in, and we got a bunch of other stuff. The writer's strike is kind of holding us back from doing that right now. But so yeah, yeah.
Do you see any daylight with that strike?
Um, yes and no. I think they pretty much have to close it up by the end of this year. Otherwise, like network TV is screwed if they don't close it up this year. And I know AMC already struck a deal with the Writers and the Actors Guild. So I think other networks will start doing that. The biggest problem is just like Netflix and Amazon, who seem like the big streamers, they just don't want to budge at all. But I think they're going to have to eventually.
Yeah, for sure. It almost reminds me of like the teaching profession. These teachers, just especially now coming out of this whole COVID period, and the kids that are stunted, it's like they're just not getting what they're worth. And it's the whole adage, I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything new, but it's kind of that whole thing. So let me ask you this. When you were in the let me ask you this. If you were to be in front of a bunch of
Mhm.
third graders right now, and one of the kids
Yeah.
looked up and said, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
Um, Well, it's kind of twofold because I have a regular day job, and then I also write and do music at night. So I'd say my regular day job is basically a sales technician engineer
Okay.
for a company, and then outside of that, writing and comedy and music.
I listen to Rogan enough to just kind of he talks about the comedic world a lot. What is that like? What was the first time that you hopped on stage and tried to tell a joke, and how did you gain steam and get to a point where it was a comfortable thing?
Oh, first time was at Riddle's Comedy Club in Orland Park, kind of south, just outside the city, south of Chicago. And what kind of got me into that was I was dating a girl at the time, and she had tickets to go see the Roots. And I told her I can't go because I want to try stand up. She's like, "You're gonna pass up on the Roots concert?" I was like, "Yeah." And I enjoyed it. The first joke really worked, and I just kept at it. And it was probably 2 years or so where I was like, "Okay, I think I got some momentum. I think I can go somewhere with this."
Yeah.
So that was the kickoff point, Riddle's Comedy Club.
So when you were a kid in the third grade, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Hmm.
What was your dream?
Oh, baseball player.
Okay.
That was it.
Who
Yeah,
who
played baseball since. Go ahead.
No, 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 go ahead. No, you're good.
Oh, since first grade. When I first went to the first grade, who ended up becoming my best friend, Bobby. I found out that he played baseball, so I came home and told my mom I need to go play baseball, and so she signed me up for the baseball, and that was it. I was hooked. Got scholarships to college. Played through for 4 years of college. That was all I wanted to do.
Okay. So what happened? Did you want to go to the pro? I mean, how did that how did you get into the arts versus being a player?
It was actually pretty simple. Where like I had the talent for it, and there's guys who played professionally who I was better than and played against and beat. But it was just like I guess, poor connections and poor coaching. Like my college coaches were at Florida A&M were not good and
Okay.
very unhelpful. So that's part of it. Also, I didn't have like a Shaquille O'Neal like talent where I'm blowing 100 miles per hour or anything.
Yeah.
But the way I kind of got out of that was I always loved sports and music. So around my second or third year of college, I got these CD turntables. So I started being DJing. And after that, I started getting a beat machine and doing more stuff in that area. And I was always a goofball on the team who would be cracking jokes and making up nicknames and all that stuff. So naturally, I was always kind of good at writing stuff on the fly. And it kind of just after I got out of college and got a regular job, I was like, well, this regular job kind of sucks. I don't really like talking in front of people, but I'd rather do this comedy stuff and be nervous doing that all the time than this regular job crap.
For sure. Who was your baseball player? Who was the go-to guy that you always looked up to?
In Little League, it was probably Ricky Henderson.
Yeah.
I used to love the A. So Jose Canseco, he was
Yep.
also my guy there. Eric Davis on the Reds, Barry Larkin because I played shortstop.
Yeah.
In Little League, those were my guys. And then later on, when I became basically only a pitcher in college, it was like Kevin Brown and Pedro Martinez.
Okay. So if you could go back in time and see any moment in baseball history with your own eyes, where are you going?
Oh, that's a lot of them. Trying to think of one great one. Uh, ooh, I, there's a lot of them. You got Jackie Robinson breaking in, Ken Griffey Jr.'s first game because I had his rookie card. Love that guy.
Yeah.
Perfect game from Don Larson in the World Series.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them. There's just a lot.
But yeah,
I can't really nail one down.
yeah, you
Yeah.
can't do that right down to one. So talk to me a little bit about where you were born and raised and how these seeds got into you to want to be in sports and to want to be an artist and perform. How did that happen?
Okay. Basically, I grew up on South Side Chicago, and I was kind of always a bit introverted, so I used to draw a lot and I used to write a lot as a kid. And the way I got into sports was just kids in the neighborhood. We play, like pick up football. Basically, we played a game called Killer Man. Basically, throw the ball up, and whichever the furthest direction is to the touchdown, that's the direction you have to run, and everybody tries to tackle you. So yeah, it's called Killer Man. We played that all the time. And then I played baseball because I had first grade had jumped into baseball. And like we played stickball in the neighborhood because like when I moved to the townhome right behind Hyde Park High School, there was a bunch of kids in that area. So we played baseball or football pretty much year round. So that's how I got into that. And then for comedy wise, I was a guy who always loved stand-up comedy. For some reason, I always loved stuff that was really honest or like not kind of corrupted, like objective metrics, like, okay, this guy's funny or these guys has this kind of stats, like that's legitimate. So I always loved comedy, loved watching it. And I remember my mom was finishing up one of her first PhD. So I stayed at my aunt's place when I was probably like, I don't know, second grade or second or third grade or something like that. And I remember I'd always fall asleep on the floor on the couch and I'd get waken up by Johnny Carson's the music. And I'd watch it. And I remember seeing Eddie Murphy on there with this little skinny tie. I'm like, I've never seen a skinny tie. And I was like, this guy's really funny. So a couple years later, he was huge, and I wanted to go see Eddie Murphy Raw.
Oh
And I
man.
believed I was 8 or 9 years old at the time. And my mom, she loved Richard Pryor, so she knew exactly what his act was for Eddie Murphy. And she's like, no, you're not going to go see Eddie Murphy. But I was with my dad that weekend. I don't know if he didn't know who Eddie Murphy was or didn't care. He's like, sure, we'll go see it. And he took me to go see that. And I was like, I remember 15 minutes in the movie, I looked over at him, just gave him a look like, I should not be watching this. But I ended up, I loved it. So that was kind of my kickoff point right there, I guess, for comedy.
Yeah, that was the iconic thing. That's probably for comedians, that's probably one of the top things, top performances ever, you know?
Oh, yeah. That and Delirious, yeah, to the
Yeah.
biggest.
Yeah. So, who's been a hero for you in your life?
Hero for me in my life. Um, in part, my mom, she's great. But besides that, I don't think I really have I have heroes for like things people have done, but not like as overall, like this person is a hero. Like I love Dave Chappelle, all his comedy, but I don't like know him I don't know his whole personal life to call him a hero. Um, I still love Pedro Martinez. I read his autobiography. He seems like a great dude. I love his pitching style and his aggressiveness, everything about him. So I guess I wouldn't have one person, and I think it probably starts from Jose Canseco was my favorite baseball player, and then I learned later on like oh, this guy was on every kind of steroid you could possibly use. So I think that type of stuff kind of chipped away at my idea of like, oh, this person is a hero. I should look up to them for everything. It's more like I want to look at like, oh, he's a great hitter, or you're great at XYZ, or Jerry Seinfeld's a great writer, or Tina Fey's a great writer, something like that, where I could like, okay, you're a hero for that particular thing, but I'm not gonna give you like a hero title, like you're a overall hero in everything you do in life.
You know what's weird? I was talking to my stepdaughter. She's a big fan of the 70 that 70s show, and I was talking about that
Yeah,
Danny story, and I was like,
Masterson.
yeah,
Yeah,
the mattress. And I'm wondering, we're entering this phase of our lives with cancel culture and all of this, where these people are making these decisions that are kind of tainting the things that we've watched and we've looked into. And I find that to be a weird phenomenon because there's a lot of people up to this point, whether it's Kevin Spacey or whoever it is that's made these
mm,
decisions. And how do you go about getting into their art and separating the person from the art? You know what I'm saying? It's kind of a weird
yeah, I get you.
juxtaposition in modern life.
Yeah, I actually have no problem whatsoever with it, just because I think I'm a naturally a pessimistic person.
Yeah.
So when these things come out, it doesn't really bother me.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember I had openly made like I made jokes on stage about like, can we get the Cosby Show back on TV? Just give me the reruns back. We all know he's a serial rapist, but like it's still a great show. I still want to watch the
Yeah.
show. And then you see like I'm just kind of sadistic like that. There's little things where he had like his special barbecue sauce that he give like the family the sauce, and then all of a sudden everyone get really horny. And I'm like, he was kind of giving you
Yeah,
clues
right.
about what
He
he was doing.
was.
I find that I find that hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got no problem separating. Like Kevin Spacey, I know a guy. This is a funny story. I understand. I've heard rumors about Kevin Spacey a little bit, but I met a guy when I was working in LA. He was best friends in the wedding of Brandon Ruth, who starred in he played Superman in the movie where Kevin Spacey was Lex Luthor,
Yeah.
and he talked about he's tight friends with Brandon Ruth. Well, Brandon was telling his buddy all the time. He's like, this director Bryan Singer is trying to screw me every time. Like he wants me to go to his room and try on the uniform. He's trying to bang me, and he complained about how bad Bryan Singer was. And at no point did his friend ever say Kevin Spacey was a problem. And I was just like, now I'm like, I'm back like, holy crap, how bad was Bryan Singer that Kevin Spacey was not an issue?
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm sure I've heard multiple things about Spacey, but I, I don't put a lot of work, not a lot of work, but I don't put it as bad just because he's a middle aged guy hitting on other guys. Like there isn't a physical dynamic difference where like Cosby's, drugging him, Harvey Weinstein's, 280-pound huge guy, and he's dealing with 20-year-old actresses who are about 100 pounds. That's even more horrible to me.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, it's wild, man. Yeah, it's just this modern living, man. There's so many levels and fences and walls and things that we just didn't have to think about when we were growing up. It just wasn't a part of just kind of our psyche, so to speak. Um,
yeah.
so if you can meet anybody alive on the planet right now, one person, and spend some time with them, who would it be?
Dead or alive?
We'll open it up to everybody. Yeah.
Okay, Prince. Prince is my favorite musical artist. I've read so many things about him, seen so many stuff about him. I know a couple guys who have met him. That's the one guy I'd like to sit down and have a conversation with about his life, his career, his philosophy, everything, basically everything he does. Yeah, that's probably the one guy.
There was I cover jazz, jazz radio. I have a jazz radio show and interview musicians, and there was a cat that came through. I think it was Victor Wooten, bass player, and he played at one of our venues, and he had a relationship with Prince, and he said
Oh,
one time he saw Prince walk up, and he said, I have never seen a sexier man in my entire life because he had the high heels. He came in, he said, dude, like there was something about him that just like transcended gender, transcended anything. He just came up and there
yeah,
was this energy that came off of him. And I always remember that story about, just seeing Prince and how he did it because he was kind of a smaller dude, but he
oh yeah,
just took over the room when he came in. So,
yeah.
um,
He just had that presence, and the idea that he could wear like shawls and lace underwear and heels, and
yeah.
he's still. You look back in the '80s and '90s, every hot woman in that area, he was basically with them at
Uh-huh.
some point or another. Like
Uh-huh.
this guy was getting guys by like 5'5", 5'4", getting
Yeah.
all these super hot women, and he's basically wearing women's clothes half the time.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's mind blowing to me.
Yeah. Yeah. He had that
Yeah,
cool about him for sure. Um,
yeah.
so what is it about what you do for a living? What's the motivator? What's the thing that gets you out of bed? What makes you want to be who you are and accomplish what you want to get done?
Just doing a good job on whatever subject matter or whatever the thing is I'm doing, whether it be music production or writing comedy. Just doing the best I possibly can, and hopefully at some point being once again fully out of a regular job and not have to have a regular job while I'm doing this.
So, as a creative, you obviously are diversified. There's a lot of things that are on your radar of what you do. If you had right now an agent that says, I need to whittle you down to one thing and we're going for it, what are you going to do?
Uh, Probably television
Okay.
writing or stand up. But the only thing is with stand up, it's so weird. You basically have to be an actor at least to get your foot in that door to the point where you can headline gigs where you have to have TV appearances. Um, that's the tough part about doing stand up, or someone has to kind of pull you in. So I would say TV writing.
So, of all of the things that you've done in your life creatively, what's been one of the best fan responses that you've ever gotten?
Best fan responses is probably uh, hmm. Well, I'll tell you the most entertaining one was like one of the first times I was bombing. Uh, it was University of Illinois, and it was like a Black college reunion weekend. So it was like classes from like the '90s, 2000s, maybe the '80s. And I did. It was a week. I remember it was a week Obama was elected, and none of my jokes worked. None of them. And I just basically had to end every joke by saying, "We got Obama, right?" That was the only thing that got any real applause. And I remember afterwards, a guy came up to me and said, "We thought you were like the anti-comedy." And I was like, okay, I'm just waiting for my check to get out of here. So that one, I remember that was an experience where I was like, after that, I wasn't really worried about doing anything. So I'm like, I can't bomb worse than that with about 1,200 people who thought I was the anti-comedy. But as far as positive stuff, it was probably for screenplays I've written, where people were like, I wrote one where a couple producers told me this is excellent, and this is before this whole cancel culture came in. They were like, you should get this to Louis C.K. He'd be perfect for this. He never ended up reading it. He actually I got it to him, but he said I can't read anything right now. It was like the second or third season of his Louis show on FX, so he's like, I just don't have time. I can't do it. Um, but like that was probably one of the best. I'm like, Louis, you think like because he was on fire at that point. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Louis won't come to Kansas City, man. He talks bad about us. I don't
Really?
know. Yeah, I don't know what happened, but
Huh.
he's 86 Kansas City, which at this point now it probably really doesn't matter. But at his height, I think
Yeah.
he was on with Leno or one of those cats, and he was like, "Yeah, I can't do Kansas City," and it just really like railed on us bad. It was very strange. So
Huh.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it happens. I mean,
Huh.
some people just have experiences in
Yeah.
cities and it's like, I'm out. I get it. I don't take it personally. It's just the way it is. But um,
Yeah.
so of all of the things that you've created, artistically speaking, what are you the proudest of?
Hmm. Ooh. The proudest is probably my writing for stand up. How like in my opinion how sharp. That's probably the proudest thing of how I approach jokes and how I attack jokes, kind of methodically. But like that's probably the proudest thing I am of that because that's of all the areas. That's when you're doing stand up. Even though it's written good, you have to perform it good. It has to be live. So everything else like TV writing, you can edit that down. You can get other writers to punch it up. Same thing with screenplays. Music wise, you can always tweak something, change the sound. But stand up's really pure. And that you can't go back and edit and change a bunch of stuff. So I'm probably most proud of that.
When did the best ideas come? Is it a middle of the night, driving your car? What moments does the
Really,
ideas gravitate?
it can be anytime. Normally, I don't write anything at night. I know a couple times I've been driving back from gigs and just my mind is kind of still going, and I'll be like, "That's a good idea," and I'll jot it down or punch it in my phone or something. But it's really any type of time. Normally, I never write at night. I only write during the day. But an idea can pop up anytime. It might be first thing in the morning. It might be before I go to bed. It could be anytime.
So let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into a 20-year-old version of
Mhm.
yourself, and you could give that younger version of
Mm.
you a piece of advice based on the life you've led, the wisdom you've gained. What would you tell that young version of you?
Don't listen to people who are older than you and believe that they know what they're talking about. Listen to your gut and do what you feel is right. Uh, I'd say that would probably be the biggest thing. I listen to people who, as I went on, I found out, oh, you really don't know what you're talking about. I don't really know how you got in that position. I don't know connections or whatever, or who you were sleeping with that you got this power position, but you really don't know what you're talking about. So that'd be the number one. Trust your gut. Don't listen to these idiots just because they're old doesn't mean they're wise.
Yeah, that's such good advice. So let's kind of flip the table a little bit on that. What is the best advice you've ever gotten that you've always remembered that's been the most beneficial for you?
Oh, I think the best advice was probably from one of the not good people. I had a coach, Matt Palencia, in high school, and I was starting on varsity since the end of my freshman year, playing third base. And I remember I had a bad game or something, and he was not a good dude. He ended up getting fired, but he had great advice. He said, if you don't hustle every chance you get on this field, you never know who's watching you. So everything you do, if you're playing great or you're playing terrible, hustle, run hard, play hard all the time when you're on the field. That was probably the best advice, and I was like, yeah, that's actually great. That's a great piece of advice. Yeah.
So everyone out there has a perception of you. You have all these pockets, whether it's your day job as a musician, as a comedian, writer, but
Hmm.
ultimately family, friends, they all have this idea of who they think you are. But you run the show. What's your
Yeah.
perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Oh, a quiet guy who doesn't like expressing too many emotions. That'd be my perception of myself. Like I'm kind of weird and like I enjoy talking about stuff I want to talk about, like television, movies, stand-up, sports, that type of stuff. But if it's not that, I really don't enjoy chiming in for stuff like that. I guess I'm very selective about who I choose to talk to. Uh, yeah, that'd be about me.
So, as somebody that lives in Chicago and somebody here that loves Chicago, what do you love the best about that city?
Um, a lot of things. Location, you're kind of in the middle of everything, so it's not too long to get to New York, not too long to get to LA, not too long to get anywhere. The people are good. It's sort of like a slightly nicer version of New York. I love New York because the people will tell you if you're great or if you suck. While people in the Midwest, Chicago area will kind of tell you that, but they'll try and put a positive spin on it.
Yeah.
Like there's no truly unruly fans in Chicago as opposed to somewhere like New York or Boston where they're like, throwing snowballs at Santa Claus because they're pissed. Um, so I like that aspect of it. I like that you got a large body of water right there with Lake Michigan. There's plenty of stuff to do. It's also you can like drive out a little bit. You can be in a really kind of rural area really quickly. Only thing I don't like, there's no mountains. It's just all flat, which
Yeah.
is one thing I liked about California, where like you had this topography that was great. You can be in flat here by the shore. You go in 2 hours, and you're up in the mountains.
Yeah.
So I really like that aspect of California.
I miss that with being in Kansas City, being landlocked, man. It's so hard. No ocean, no mountains, but
Yeah.
it is convenient. You're right in the middle, so it's easy to get out and about. So, hey man, if anyone wants to learn more about you, pick up anything that you've done creatively, your world, your life, where can they go?
You can go to Amazon.com for anything I've written. Just type my name in, Haji Outlaw. Other than that, you can just follow me on Instagram, on Twitter. I'm at Outlaw Haji. That's really, you can find anything I'm doing right there.
You got a great name, man. Great stage name, Haji
Thank you.
Outlaw. It's so great. But this has been great, man.
Thank you.
I got to tell you real quick before we get off. You mentioned Conseco.
Sure.
When I was a kid, my best friend and I, we used to write all the baseball players in the 80s, and we'd handwrite
Great.
letters to them to get autographs. And we used to start calling them too. And I remember I got Conseco on the phone. We found out where their hotel was in
All
Kansas City. And man, he
right.
answered the phone. He's all groggy. I'm like, hey, Jose, will you sign a baseball card if I send it in the mail? And he's just kind of like, I could feel him take the phone away, like, what the hell's going on here? And he just came back and he said, yeah, man, I'll sign your card, and hung up. And that was it. But I always remember you know, I woke the dude up. He didn't know who I was. I'm 12. My voice is cracking, and he was
Yeah.
cool with me. So,
Huh.
and I think there's a part of Canseco's karma that may be redeemed because he's the one that really officially blew the whistle. As much as he pissed everybody off,
Yeah.
he was the one that put himself out there and said, you know what? There's a problem, and I'm going to be the guy. So I don't think it's going to clean
Yeah.
all of his legacy up, but I think he did a little
No.
bit of karmic good by doing that, you know. So,
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. And he's been really honest. He said A-Rod was on steroids from the beginning.
yeah.
He attested like he said Jeter's just a clean cut, great guy. So he's been 99.9% of the time, he's been dead on the money with everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, hey, man, thank you, man. Thank you for opening up. Thanks for your story and best of luck with everything.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You bet. So, do you have any plans on coming through and doing any comedy in Kansas City?
I'd love to. I know once I've been there a couple times. I forgot the comedy club. I think it was around. It was a long time ago. It was like a showcase or something for just for laughs. That was the last time I was out there.
Okay.
This has been well over 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But I'd love to. I had a couple buddies who went to University of Kansas, so I visited them out there. Was that Overland or
Oh,
Lawrence? Lawrence.
Lawrence. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Last time I did that drive was to Kansas City to that comedy club. But I'd like to, but I got no plans locked in right now.
Okay. Well, I'll keep my eyes out. I'd love to see you live, man. Cool.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Best of luck with everything.
Thanks for having me.
Take care.